I was working in equity derivatives, and I was a senior analyst doing my work on the desk. And a guy walked up to me and he asked me where the envelopes were. And so I didn't think much of it. So I was obviously being very helpful, and I showed him where the envelopes were. And then a few weeks later, another guy came up to me and asked me where the paper clips were. And then all of a sudden, I began to realize that I think these people thought I was an assistant. And so it's those stories where people don't expect to see a certain face doing a certain role. And I think that's something that has to change over time. And obviously, when the third person came up to me, I realized I had to sort of nip it in the bud and say, you better ask the assistants where the paper clips are, where the envelopes are.
And she said to me, everyone here is dressed so nicely, and I'm embarrassed about what I'm wearing. That linked to why she didn't want to take her coat off. And we have to not forget that these tall glass buildings in the city, the way that we go into offices, can be incredibly intimidating. And actually breaking down some of those barriers where it doesn't really matter how you dress, it doesn't matter kind of where you come from, I think is part of our duty if we're trying to get a broadened range of talent within our industry.
My goal is really to make strides in creating a more inclusive industry where there's opportunity for all, and where diversity will no longer be talked about, but really be a reality of the investment industry, and to be really someone that uses her platform to make a difference.
The managing director that I worked with during my first year as an associate there, and she pulled me into her office one day and she said, I would just want to give you some perspective on things. And I said, okay, great, no problem. And she said, I want to make sure that you understand the hierarchy in corporate America. And I'm not saying that I agree with it, but I'm just saying this is what it is. And I don't want you to not know what it is. And she said, it basically goes white man, black man, white woman, black woman. That's how it's been over time. Now, I want you to take that information and figure out, how do you rejigger that, and how do you keep climbing, even though this is the structure that society has set up. And I don't want you to be naive when you come up against roadblocks, because again, this is the framework that's out there.
I made a commitment to myself that no matter how tough it was, no matter how challenging it was, there was a reason why I had to do this. And every time I think about giving up and shifting to do something that's easier, I remember that feeling of being the only one in my first employer. And it was not a safe space for me to be myself. And so I imagine that it is difficult for clients to fully show up as themselves with some advisors if they don't feel that same safety, right? So I think that having advisors who look like you, and even though they might not have the same experiences, that can identify with what you may be experiencing, helps shape the way you receive information.
I think it's better to ask for forgiveness and permission, and it's better to be forward thinking and try to find solutions and try to be additive, as opposed to not finding the solutions and waiting on others to solve problems for you, and to find balance. But I think it's really important to forge ahead and sort of be a trailblazer.